Hello and welcome to SpedAnswers.com. My name is Tammy Joya and I'm an advocate, and this is the Parent's Manual. This is what parents must know before and during their initial request for special education services. These are 10 crucial steps that you need to know. You need to know the definition of what IDEA says is a disability. Step 1. Step 2 is request your child's records. Step 3, requesting tests. What should you know first? Step 4, creating your filing system. Step 5, review your child's records. Step 6, the team meeting. Step 7, determination of eligibility for special education. Step 8, teacher certification. Step 9, the team members. And step 10 is going to be the corresponding special education regulations related to the topics in this volume. Step 1, the IDEA definition of a disability. This is pursuant to 34 CFR 300.8. That's the IDEA regulation number. These are all of the disability categories listed under IDEA, the federal regulations. For each one of these categories, there's a definition when you look it up under 34 CFR 300.8. Okay? Some states have apparently just started creating their own. If it's not listed here, it's not under IDEA. Okay? Requesting your child's records. Before you get started with this, you're going to need your kids' records, and that starts with report cards, attendance records, discipline records, IEP or 504 documents, quarterly progress reports, amendments to IEPs, evaluations that were done, teacher assessments. Make sure that you request these records in writing. You want to date it and sign it and keep a copy for your records. Send a certified return receipt to the special ed director or the person in charge of special education. You want to put their name on it. Or you can hand deliver it to the school and have the school date and stamp your copy of the document. So now you have a record that they received it, even though you hand delivered it. You want to do this because the district has a timeline that they have to follow. Here's a sample letter for the records. This is what you want to include in your letter to them, even if it's in an email. It's everything in here except for if you look at the evaluation protocols, and I have included a website address that's just for Massachusetts, but you can ask for evaluation protocols. Make sure you sign it, you date it, and you send it to the school district. Okay? Give them a few days to respond. Usually they'll respond right away, but they have to respond to you within 30 days. But check your state's regulations on student records, release of student records. Most of the time they follow FERPA, but you can check it out on the your Department of Education's website. Okay, so you want to create a paper trail. You want to make sure that you always have a document to back up anything that you're requesting or to support that you did make a request at a certain time. School districts can charge for copying documents like the student records unless your child receives free or reduced lunch. You want to track telephone conversations with a date and who you spoke with. You want to make all requests for documents or documents that are provided to the school should be written, dated, and signed by you. Never, ever, ever sign something and not get a copy of it from the district. And never give them anything without your signature and the date on it. And any documents you give to the school must be copied and include the date and signed by you and the school with the date they received the document, or send document directly to the SPED director via certified return receipt. And then when you get that little green card, just attach it to your copy, because you always keep a copy for your records. Whatever you put in writing to the school, you keep a copy for your records. So I'm going to tell you how to support your requests. You want to document all conversations you have with the school staff. You want to, any requests to and from the teachers, you've got to put it in writing. Don't just pick up the phone and call people. Always do it in writing. Even if you talk to somebody on the phone, put that conversation in writing and just say, this is to reiterate our conversation we had earlier today at such and such a time regarding such and such an issue, whatever it is. You need to track any poor behaviors or inappropriate behaviors your child is having in class, which is usually reported by the teacher, so you want to keep track of that. And usually they put it in writing. You want to track any frustration levels your child is having with schoolwork, any difficulties. You want to check the assignment book every day, okay? Step 3, requesting tests. What should you know? First of all, you should know that this costs the school district some money, so they rarely like to do it. They usually don't test in all areas of suspected disability. Okay, so when you make your request for them to do the testing, make sure you try to include as much as you think they should do. So if you're going to do a psychological test or academic testing, you want to include social, emotional, behavioral, academic, and IQ testing. Okay, that's all areas. I mean, you can even get more detailed, but right off the back, you want that. The districts know that you don't know the laws that protect your child. Understand that. They know. If they say it's black, believe this is white. They have 60 days to complete any tests that they do. Make sure all of the areas um, that they're assessing, make sure they assess in all areas. Assessments may be an opinion and not based on technically sound instruments. Okay, if they do that, that's a no-no. All tests that they do have to be, must be, based on valid and reliable, technically sound instruments. So they can't go to a meeting and use their opinions. Yeah, no, and then make a determination of eligibility or ineligibility. They have to have, and just because they write it down on a piece of paper doesn't mean it's valid or reliable or it's technically sound. Um, so whether they're just using their opinions or they're actually writing their opinions down on a piece of paper, if they don't have an instrument that they used that measured what your child's abilities are in a specific area, then they're in violation and they can't make a determination of eligibility. And if they do, you can actually request an IEE or an independent evaluation at public expense. Just know that they have to do that. Here are some samples of tests that can be administered. So you can do a psychological or clinical psychological testing, academic and educational, speech and language, communication, augmentative communication, functional behavioral assessment, a coordinated set of activities, occupational therapy that includes sensory integration, physical therapy, the ABLS R, and there's so much more. There's just a lot of testing areas that you can test your kid in. So it's not limited to whatever the school district says it's limited to. Okay? It can go way beyond what they're telling you. So when you want to request a test, this is the letter. This is what it needs to look like. And it says, I'm writing to request and provide informed consent for the following evaluations regarding my son or daughter. And then you list all of the tests. The school district only has 60 days to get it done, and it doesn't matter what their procedures are. From the day you sign this and you give it to them, they have 60 days. You don't have to go to a meeting to discuss what tests you want done or what areas you want done. They still have 60 days from the day you gave them this letter. Okay, so they don't need to go to a special committee. They don't need to do any of that. When you put this request in writing, they have 60 days to get it done. Doesn't matter what they think their procedures are. According to the regs, they have 60 days from the second you gave this. And they don't get to make the determination of the areas. They don't get to say that we're not going to do those. If they're not going to do it, then they have to put it in writing. Whatever areas you put in there and they say, well, we don't need to do that, they need to put everything they're saying no to in writing at all times. They have to put it in writing and tell you why they said no. If they don't, that's a violation. If they don't get this testing done in 60 days, that's a violation. Check your state to make sure, is it 60 calendar days, or in some states like Massachusetts, we have 60 school working days, which means only days, they count 60 days as only the days that school is actually open. So it doesn't include holidays, it doesn't include school vacations, it doesn't include the summer. So, but in some states, it's 60 calendar days, which means it includes all of that, which I like better. And you want to make sure that you sign it and you date it and you keep a copy for your records. If they don't get it done in 60 days, this is the document that you can use to prove that they didn't do it. Now, they might send you another one. And what I would do, if they send you their form for requesting an evaluation, then what you do is you take the date off, because it could be 2 or 3 weeks later if they send you their form. What you want to do is you want to put the same date that you have on this form, on your original request, and put it on that form, on the school district's form, and then attach a copy of your letter that says, and then take a copy of their form and attach it to your original request. Okay? Always keep a record of everything. Keep a copy for your records. Step 4 is create your filing system. This process is very difficult and it can be daunting at times. And the more organized you are, the better you'll understand what's going on with your kid and if the school district is doing what they're supposed to do under the law. So you want to create a filing system that has an IEP folders, report card folders, attendance, discipline, progress reports, evaluations, correspondence to and from the school. You want to create a folder for each one of these things, for each one of these areas. And you want to make sure that they're dated. So you put the earliest or the latest document in front in each one of these files, because you could get 3 or 4 IEPs, or you could get amendments to IEPs. So you want to make sure that the newest document is always in the front. Okay. Step 5. When you request your kids' records, make sure that you review them. Don't just ask for them and not look at them. And make sure when you get them, that's when you develop your filing system. So you put that's when you'll have all of the records. And you can go get yourself a nice box of file folders, manila file folders, and you just tab everything. You say IEPs and you write IEPs 2015, and you just go right through it and make a folder for each one of these, and you put each one of these documents in the appropriate folder. Okay, now for evaluations in state testing and teachers assessments, you may have more than one folder under evaluations, only because schools can do evaluations, you can get outside evaluations done, you can have teachers assessments, state testing, so you could have more than one file for evaluations. You don't want to put everything in there. You don't want to mix up your evaluations that you had completed by your private people mixed in with the school districts. You want them separate. Okay. The team meeting. So after you've done the request to do the evaluations, within 60 days, they have to have a team meeting. And you're going to get a notice in writing. And when you get the notice, make sure it has the date, time, location, and purpose of the meeting. And make sure it has a copy of the attendance sheet of everybody that's going to be attending the team meeting. Okay? And make sure when you make the request for um, evaluations to be completed, that you tell them in the letter that you want the evaluations 48 hours before the team meeting. You want the opportunity to review these evaluations before the team meeting, because if you don't, you're going to have a bunch of questions that you're not going to realize until after the team meeting. So you want to walk in prepared. So make sure that you write down your questions, you review it, and you highlight the copies that you have. And that way, when you go into the meeting, you have your questions all ready for them. You still may have questions after, but at least you're prepared, because believe me, before you walked into that meeting, they all read each other's evaluation. So they were prepared to say what they need to say. They already know what they're going to say at this meeting when they make the determination of eligibility. Okay? Okay, so after they review the evaluations that you requested, that you got within 60 days, that you reviewed 48 hours before the team meeting, part of that team meeting is a determination of eligibility. The determination of eligibility is based on the evaluations and report cards and a whole bunch of other stuff, but for the most part, it's based on the valid and reliable, technically sound instruments that they used. So two things could happen at this meeting. They could have a findings of special needs, which means they will develop an IEP, which you're a part of. You're a part of all of these decisions. Okay, it's called parent participation. They're going to write up goals and objectives. They're going to discuss placement, like where's your child going to go? Is it going to be in a significantly separate classroom? Is it going to be in an integrated co-taught classroom? Is it going to be in an out-of-district placement? Is it going to be a day? Is it going to be a residential? And then you have your options. Do you accept their determination? Do you reject it? Do we reject it in part? Now, just because in some states parents don't have to sign the IEP, just because you don't have to sign it doesn't mean you don't have any options. You can still reject it. You just go to a page on that IEP if you don't like what they wrote and you don't like, or you like some of it, but you don't like all of it. You just say what you're rejecting it in part, or you're rejecting it entirely, or you're just rejecting the placement, but you're accepting the services. And they have to respond to that. So, and you can say, I want a meeting after this. I want a meeting to discuss why I rejected this. You should receive the IEP after the decision as to what the determination is. You should receive, if they're going to develop an IEP, you should receive the proposed IEP that doesn't say draft on it within 10 days after the team meeting. The other option that they could do at the meeting is give you a findings of no special needs. So it could be that your child has been deemed a child with a disability and they'll put them on a 504. Or it could be that your child doesn't have a disability. And what you can do is, if they come back and they say that, you can reject the school's finding in writing. You can send a copy of the rejection to the State Department of Education, and you can request an independent evaluation. That's at public expense, or reject their findings and use your own insurance and go get your kid evaluated using your own insurance, or you pay out of pocket, because it's a mess trying to get the school district to fund an independent evaluation. If the school district used valid and reliable, technically sound instruments, then it's going to be a problem. Because now they have to take you to hearing if you reject their findings. They have to take you to hearing if you ask for an independent evaluation at public expense. They're supposed to file for a hearing. If they don't, that's good. If they do, they have to, the reason why they have to file for it after you ask for an independent evaluation at public expense is because the district has to prove that their evaluations were appropriate and that they were done properly, and so the findings were good. That's what the findings was supposed to be. So basically they're saying we stand by our evaluations. And that's the independent evaluation thing is a whole different topic, and we'll go into it at another time. But for right now, you can reject the school district's findings, and just do that, and then take it and make a decision as to what you want to do. I strongly suggest that if you have insurance, that you use your child's insurance and you go get these evaluations done on your own. And I can talk to you more about taking it to the next level as to the types of evaluations that you'll need that are more in depth than what the school district did. Okay. Okay, teacher certification. Everybody sitting at that team has to be licensed and or certified by the state to be teachers in your that are educating your children. If there's an OT, a PT, a speech and language pathologist, those people also have to be licensed and or certified in your state. Whatever those state rules are, to have to be licensed and or certified to practice that particular field, that's what they have to have at your team meeting. So make sure that all of your people sitting at the meeting are properly credentialed. And don't be afraid to ask them, because they don't like it, but that's too bad. You can ask, because sometimes they don't have credentials. And if they get mad about it, there's a good possibility they don't have credentials. Because let me tell you something. If you went to school for 4 to 6 years to get your teaching credentials or to be licensed and certified in a particular field like OT or PT or whatever, you don't have a problem telling people that you are certified in that field. You just don't. And it's easy to find out if somebody is, even before you go to the meeting. That's why it's important that you know who the attendees are who are coming to your kids' meeting. That way, if there's an opportunity or a way you could do it in your state, you can look up these people's names and find out if they're licensed and certified in that particular field, okay, that they're going to be representing at the meeting. The art of knowing your rights, and believe me, it's an art. This is a lot of information for a lot of parents. At some point, you may want to know the teachers and specialist credentials. You can request it in writing, and they have to tell you. Everybody that works for the public school is everything about them is pretty much a matter of public record. They're paid, their salaries are paid by your tax dollars. So you can get that information. Just put it in writing and ask for so and so's credentials. Um, they're state employees, so they have to provide that information. Um, You can request a meeting prior to the evaluations also to discuss the procedures and the tests that will be used regarding your concerns and to explain the tests that will be administered to your child. That's also one of your rights. A lot of people don't know that. But you can say, I want to have a meeting with a psychologist who's going to run these tests. I want to know what tests they're running, what the purposes of the test, and what the results could show. Like, what would it show? And you can sit down and have that meeting with that evaluator. Um, the art of protection for children with disabilities. A child with a disability, if you're on an IEP, your child is automatically covered under 504. If your child has a 504 plan, they're only covered under 504, but they're still protected. So under like the Americans with Disabilities Act, but it's really not the Americans with Disabilities Act until they're like 18, but it's pretty much the same thing. They're individuals with disabilities, so therefore they have to have accommodations. Um, so if they're deemed a child with a disability and they're on a 504, they're still protected. But if you're on an IEP, you're protected under both IDEA and Office of Civil Rights or Civil Rights laws. Team members. These are the people that actually are supposed to be at your kid's team. If it's not determined yet if your child is going to be in a regular ed classroom, like a co-taught classroom, then the initial team meeting has to include both a regular ed and a special ed teacher. The district has to provide somebody to who has the authority to make a decision at that team meeting. Like you can't go through the team and you say, well, I want OT for my kid, and then the person in charge, the chairperson, says, well, I have to go and talk to the SPED director. That's illegal. They're supposed to come to the meeting with the authority to make those decisions because you need answers right now. So the whole meeting is supposed to be that whoever's making that decision, they either have to say yes or no at that meeting. Um, for every evaluation that's done, for every category, for every field, there has to be somebody who's licensed in that field that's interpreting the evaluations. For instance, you can't have a social worker interpreting an OT eval. You can't have the school psychologist interpreting a speech and language eval. So the people that are interpreting the evaluations have to be licensed and certified in that specific field. Um, if your child is 14 years or older, the district is mandated to give your child the option to attend the meeting, but the child is no way, shape, or form mandated to attend. Some schools try to pull that, and they're not mandated to attend. And sometimes those meetings are difficult. You can have your child go to the meeting, but I would strongly suggest that this is after all of the evaluations have been discussed. And then you can bring the student in. But at no time is that to bring the child in to allow school professionals to berate or make the child feel bad about what they're doing and not doing, or to reprimand them at that meeting. That's just not appropriate. And that's not what it's about. Um, And it is a federal requirement. That's the law that it falls under, 34 CFR 300.321. Um, IDEA special education laws, it's federal, and school districts have to implement them. Every school district that I've ever been in contact with, or that I've seen on the internet under the Office of Special Education Program, accepts federal money for the special education. And then the state doles out that money to districts so that they can use it. But the districts and the state have to make assurances that they will comply with IDEA or state special education regulations, which also encompasses the federal law. So the regulations, that's the website. The regulations can be found there. And there's a little search box. So if you wanted to know, if you go to that website and you wanted to know, for instance, what's the evaluation procedures, you just write evaluations and a bunch of information will come up. And it's, every single one of them has a regulation. So there are evaluation procedures that have to be done. There's reevaluations that's separate from the evaluation procedures, but in actuality, it's part of the same thing. So if you go there, you can find out a lot of information about what the school district's obligations are, their duty and responsibility to children who have been deemed eligible or who are suspected of being eligible for special education services, and what they're supposed to do to ensure that a child receives a free and appropriate public education. These are all of the regulations that were included in this workshop. Um, and you should actually check this website out and start getting if you believe your child is a child with a disability, you really need to start looking at a lot of these laws. That's where your protections are against school districts. And believe me, you can force them to do a lot of things. I know sometimes you feel that you're all by yourself and that you can't win, and I'm here to tell you you can win. And it's not that difficult to win. And I do provide help you um, in getting some of this stuff done. Like if they violated your rights, I have the ability and I know how to do it, and I can do it for you, or I can train you to do it yourself. But I've designed my website so that things are chunked. You don't have to pay a huge free fee up front to obtain my services. If you just want me to file a complaint, I can do just that piece. If you want me to review your child's IEP, I can do that. If you want me to review the determination of eligibility, I can do that. I can give you recommendations. There's lots of things on my website. Just go to spedanswers.com, or you can reach me at spedissues@yahoo.com for more information about what I offer. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to help you. And our next workshops will be on developing an initial IEP, tweaking an IEP that's already been developed, because you do need to tweak it occasionally. And within a course of a year, you could tweak it more than once. Um, you One of the things that we're going to do is, where are the supports and services? Evaluations and tests and recommendations. What are they and what do they look like? So these are some of the things that we're going to be working on.